right, it's really windy out here, so we're gonna see if you can hear me. So we have been out working outside today. It is cold out, but it is finally sunny, so we're out for a little bit here. I have these cherry bushes to plant. We planted these at the old farm, and they had just started to do really well. And I actually got a little bit of fruit, I think, the first year, and then they were going into the second year when we moved. So, yeah, so I got 3 of the Hanson's bush cherries and 2 of the Nanking bush cherries. So when I had looked at cherry trees, I had found these cherry bushes. They grow kind of like a blueberry bush.
You can't eat, Mom.
So you can't see right now, but so we're gonna plant them here. I'll back up and show you. Oh my gosh, I can't walk. I was bending down and my leg is like, you're not moving. So I just rototilled this a few times over. There was this kind of gap here between the grapes and the fruit trees. So we're gonna put them in a row here, and then hopefully I'll do some mulch around them. I'd like to come up with something like mulch for this whole area, because it's really hard to mow under these fruit trees, and especially when you get over between the garden and the fruit trees, it's kind of a nightmare to mow, and it always ends up getting left and looking messy. So anyway, we'll get these bushes in. There's 5 of them, so I'm gonna do I have 3 of the one and 2 of the other, so I'm gonna do every other one. And then they are supposed to be spaced. The one kind I think is 4 to 6 feet apart, and the other side 6 to 8 foot. So I went So I went 6 foot, and I'm gonna trim them. I'll just keep them pruned to make that work. There's some hawks up there. So, all right, and then I'm gonna give you a little bit of a update. Okay, so for my records mostly, we have Hanson at the end. So Hanson, Nanking, Hanson right there, Nanking, and Hanson at the end again by the tree. Okay, so I was going to give you a quick update. If you can hear me in the wind, I don't know. So in our little jars here, some have been doing really well. We have some green plants in there. So this is purple broccoli. That seems to be really hardy. Long Island Brussels sprouts are also doing really well. You can see them down there. Okay, and then this is not doing much. This is spinach. And there's just,
Mom.
I can't get it to focus, but there's just a little, please don't bump me. There's just a little bit starting in there. I think what happened with a lot of these, I was like, of course, because you guys said, do you ever have to water them? And I said, no, I've never had to water them. Well then,
No.
I think it was a combination of, please don't. I usually use milk jugs and not pop bottles. I don't know if that made some difference. And also we had tied them together so that they wouldn't blow away. And I think that they kind of like ultra insulated the ones in the middle and kind of cooked some on the hot days. And so like with the spinach, I think what happened is they actually did sprout right away and then died because they dried up and baked. So this is lettuce, which I think did the same thing. So some of these I will have to replant. Our spinach, again, this spinach is doing a little better. This is Giant North spinach, and trying to get a little video update of our plants. You can see there's some green in there. Can't really get it to focus, but there's some green. Our little kale, there's a couple around the edges. Then this is more of the purple broccoli, and there's some growing along the edge, but this is another where I think it just got cooked, which is really sad. But I have those few doing good. And then this is, okay, so here's a quick little thing for you, information. This is the $20 Aldi greenhouse, which we bought. I think this is the 3rd or 4th year. I'd have to look back through my videos. And it looks decent. We hooked it to this panel like we normally do, but if you look, all of the connections are rotted out, and that's, so even though our zip ties have held it together, and then if you look at this, it's all, the plastic is gone. So it's really just a net, so it's not insulating anymore. So I was gonna buy a new one, and I, when I saw them at Aldi this year, they had this drop over style, I think it's called, and it was also still just $20. So I thought that would be a lot better because I could put all my stuff on the ground instead of in the tall one. I felt like I needed to rotate. I don't want to let all the heat out. Needed to rotate. So what I did is I took some of my my jugs that were for warmer weather crops. So I took some of my jugs that were for the warmer weather crops, and I put them in here, and I have been watering them then. So this is watermelon. Moon and Star is doing nothing, but the rattlesnake watermelon is coming up in there. That's exciting. Then we have some cucumbers. They, I thought, were coming up. Maybe not that kind. And then Black Beauty zucchini. Oh, that's the one. That's coming up. And so this is more like a greenhouse. This isn't winter sowing anymore because I moved them in here. I'm cheating. Cucumbers, not anything in that. And this one. This is marigolds, which I think again, maybe those started to come. I don't know. I'm gonna redo some of those. So now we have this whole area, and we're thinking maybe some trays of starting our pumpkins in here too, and getting a couple weeks jump on the pumpkins. We have a patch rototilled out back. I'll turn it around. So we have a patch rototilled out back where our pig pen was, and that's where we're gonna put pumpkins and corn. And then our boys, I think, are gonna start a pumpkin selling business this year. In the past, where we lived, our neighbors did a wagon with pumpkins for sale, and so we didn't ever want to step on toes. But here, no one did that last year. We didn't notice anybody really nearby doing it, and so I told the boys if they take care of the pumpkins, they can put them out for sale. A child crashed on the stone, so I had to run and help. So we have the greenhouse area here, grapes. That fruit tree is dead. There's these fruit trees, and now that's right where we just planted the cherry bushes. Fruit trees, I pruned a few pretty heavily a little bit ago, like a few days ago, and then the rest I didn't get to this year. And then the garden, so then there's fruit trees there. So the garden, we've like more than doubled, I think. You can see the line right here. Maybe I'll insert a picture. And then right about there was the end of the garden. And then last year I added all that new part right down there. And then I just added the rest of this today. I went over it twice this morning, and then I let it sit for a few hours in the little bit of sun we had, and then I went over it a couple more times. But the problem is going to be that tomorrow it's going to rain and the grass is just going to come back. So I really need some hot sun to kill it. But the reason I did that was because I started planting, I'll show you what's growing. I started planting potatoes, and I could have filled the whole garden with potatoes for the amount of potatoes I had. And I thought, well, shoot, I don't want to fill the whole garden with potatoes, so I'd like to put more potatoes out in this new part, but I don't know if I'll be able to get it ready in time. I might have to put the potatoes down there and then use the new part for the warm weather crops later. We'll see. But I'll show you what is growing. So these rocks are my markers, and you can see our little pea plants here are growing. Those are all starting. So this whole row is really doing pretty good. We have a lot of peas coming up, and it's kind of weedy because we added manure from the horse pen, which is always kind of a mixed blessing because it carries weeds, but I had to add something. It was so waterlogged and just like compacted. I had to add something, so we did that, add that, and just have to deal with the weeds. But as soon as the crops are up better, then I'll be able to rototill between the rows. I left space to do that. I just don't do it until the plants are bigger because I don't want to bury them. And so this is, I don't know, probably broccoli. And that came up really well. You can see it all through there. And then this is probably spinach here. And then down here we switched to something else. I don't remember. Lettuce, I think. I think this is lettuce. And then over here is either broccoli or kale again. And continuing on, there was like 3 different kinds, I think. So I was going to look at what kind this is. I think that might be the purple broccoli, and that's done really well here and in the jug. So that might be a good one to start early like this. And then the rest are potatoes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, rows of potatoes here, and I have at least that many more to plant again. But they only go from here over, because the potatoes are not up yet, but I did dig some up today just to make sure that they're not rotting. They are growing, they're starting to sprout, and they put roots out, so they are coming just slow. I had to show you guys, I think this is the first potato. This is the first little potato sprout coming up. So that's pretty exciting. It's only been a couple days since I filmed the other part of this update. So this is one coming up, and I bet if I look I'll probably find more. So these are some tomatoes that I've started. I started them outside in the greenhouse and they weren't coming up because it was just so cold. So I brought them in to kind of force them to start. Like right here, you can see one coming up, and then there's actually a bunch today. All of these little ones are starting. Trying to show you. So there, all these little ones. And then some are coming up crooked, but I'm going to give them a day or so to straighten out, and then I'll adjust them. So this was just planted in really like some composted horse manure. That's why there's a lot of junk and like a lot of little weeds and stuff are coming up in it too. But once they get going, I'll move them to the greenhouse. And they're just planted in egg cartons, and then we bottom water. So my this is just from the kitchen, a cookie sheet for right now, but we usually have like cookie sheets in the greenhouse, but they all rusted this year, so I think I'm gonna come up with something different. But the bottom watering does work really well.